Hello and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Today I have with me Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, who is going to discuss the topic of grey zone warfare. This is a much heard of topic in today's world. General Dushyant Singh, PVSM, AVSM, was commissioned into the 9th Battalion of the Maratha Light Infantry. He has served in varied terrains and various theatre of operations within India. He has commanded a corps in Punjab and was the Chief of Staff in the Eastern Sector and retired as the Commandant of the Army War College. He has the distinction of having served in the NSG twice, once as the DIG and second as the IG operations. Sir, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon to discuss this very unique subject, which is being doing the rounds in many conversations, and I don't know if a lot of us actually understand it.
Good morning, Adi. It's good to be back on your platform, and very good morning to all the listeners also.
To you as well, sir. So let me start with a very basic question. We've spoken about this offline as well. What is grey zone warfare? What is the meaning of this particular term, and what are the types that one can see around, sir?
If you ask me personally, gray zone warfare has always been existing in the global warfare scenario. Let me put it that way. It has been used for geopolitical strategic advantages by various countries at various points in time, especially by the US and the erstwhile Russia, that is USSR. They were past masters in a phenomena called regime changes, especially during the pre-Cold War or during the Cold War era. It was very prevalent. There was a method of undertaking regime changes covertly and at times overtly as well. I will speak about it much later. Basically, what gray zone means that it's a state when you are neither at war with somebody nor at peace with somebody. You are in a zone of something beyond the competition. It's a conflict short of war. So you utilize all the means available to you to gain a strategic advantage, whether it is for geopolitical advantage or whether it is an economic advantage which you want over your adversary, so that you can extend your influence and secure your national interests. Right now, this kind of a thing has already been practiced by various nations. Only recently, when an element of low-level military conflict has been introduced into this spectrum, that it has started gaining popularity, especially by Russia in the form of hybrid warfare. There is a slight difference between hybrid warfare and a gray zone warfare. In hybrid warfare, normally you will see a proper military conflict getting introduced at some stage in the conflict. So initially, it will start off with a non-military content, continue to play out in that domain for a while, and then suddenly a military content would be introduced. Whereafter, once they have achieved their particular aim, they will withdraw. I'll give you an example what the Russians did in Crimea, what they did it in Georgia, or what they did it in Ukraine. Initially, it all starts off with irregulars of that country having, of course, alliance to the Russians, trying to rise against the existing state which was there. And once they find that the situation is right, the Russians actually sent in their special forces as well in the garb of irregulars and tried to usurp the authority in Ukraine, also in Crimea. In Crimea, they were successful in. So this word gray zone started gaining popularity since then. A number of political scientists have defined it. Hoffman has defined it. Then Kordsman has also defined this thing very well. In fact, Anthony has gone a step ahead and has said that gray zone is also positive, not only negative but positive. What he says is there are positive gray zone states also, which is I will supply arms to you. Now this becomes a positive action by a country. Say, for example, Russia starts giving us S-400. Now that's an activity somewhere in the gray zone. So as far as Russia and India are concerned, it's a positive gray zone activity which is taking place. But for the Americans, it's a negative activity, and that is why the Americans have gone against. So this great game is being played all around by everyone. Earlier, it used to be known as political war. Keenan had actually Keenan had actually described political war, but then they said he had said that all activities combining all wherewithal which are there within a particular country's resource, just short of war. So this element of just short of war actually doesn't qualify to become a warfare. Whereas in gray zone, war gets in, whether through irregulars, through proxy, through terrorism, or through military conflict. Military conflict, then it goes on to the hybrid war. That's the difference. So this is what you actually imply by gray zone warfare. I mean, in simple layman terms, I'm not describing to you the definitions which people have given from time to time.
So you mentioned a couple of examples with Russia. I mean, with the types of warfare, you also mentioned terrorism, and this is something we see happening in the Kashmir Valley. Would you be able to, apart from the Kashmir Valley, elaborate on some examples that we have, as Indians, have seen in our course of history, probably after independence time?
A number of them. For example, initially the PLA in Manipur was being supported by China. Initially, the Chinese under the Communist Party, then Orthodox Communist Party, was supporting all the northeastern insurgency groups and generally had leanings towards communism. That's one example of a gray zone war being conducted by China on India. If you look at internationally, plenty of them. Iran uses terrorism to the hilt through proxy war. Hezbollah is the most active group supported by Iran, which fights in almost it fights in Palestine, it fights in Syria. Similarly, Iran supports the Houthis who fight the Saudi Arabians. So it's a game being played by everyone. And what the Americans did, they actually are the primary reason why the religious. I in fact blame it on them that they started this Mujahid war in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union.
Hmm.
Same Osama bin Laden's who had been created during the first Soviet-Afghan war came around and hit at the US. And the second Afghan war was being fought by the US with the Mujahids, and the Taliban is now opposing the Americans. So this kind of a thing has always been there in the environment. It's only that now it is being formalized into some kind of a concept.
Okay. So may involve pretty much a whole lot of things on a
Yes.
very different paradigm as well, sir. Sir, in
Absolutely.
India, this term has not been, uh, discussed or circulated around in various strategic discussions for a long time. As a matter of fact, till recently, we didn't talk about this at all. And but when one does look back, one can see pretty many examples of this kind of warfare being put on to us by our neighbors all around us, Pakistan, China, and so on and so forth. Is it that we missed out on this, or is it that we've just realized that this has been happening? Or I mean, how? What is your opinion on this, sir?
Like I said, Adi, it's not that we have missed on it. It is a concept which was formulated to club such activities uh, very recent. And this process started by first people talking about hybrid warfare, unrestricted warfare, free warfare strategy of China.
Hmm.
And slowly then people said, okay, cyber war, threshold warfare, proxy warfare, brinkmanship warfare. Now, these were terms being used by people all over the world, especially the political scientists, especially the defense experts, in order to, I think, club the whole gamut of warfare, which is not classically a contact war or a conventional war. A gray zone warfare term was evolved by the experts, so to say, and now the whole activity spectrum, which is not full scale conflict but a low level conflict, not amounting to a war, coming under this umbrella term of gray zone. I would always call gray zone as an umbrella term including various types of warfare within it. So just to tell the viewers, we have, as part of gray zone warfare, you have proxy warfare, you have regime change, overt regime change or overt regime change warfares. You have brinkmanship warfare. You have threshold warfare. You have hybrid warfare. You have hybrid balancing warfare, and you have pure and simple terrorism, terrorist warfare.
That is, it's a bit scary. So how does as a definition is concerned, how does this connect with multi-domain warfare? Is it the same concept, or there are it's a larger framework when we're talking about multi-domain, sir?
See, multi-domain warfare is I would say a strategy where warfare is being fought in various domains, right? And gray zone warfare is a warfare of a similar nature where all available means are being used to undertake activity. But a multi-domain warfare can be overt and a normal, full-fledged military conflict also. That means you undertake a military conflict, and in that you can have multi-domain warfare. That means while you are undertaking a military conflict, say with China, we are fighting a war with China. Then not only the war which is being fought between military to military, it would have various domains of military also getting involved into it. It would have the political domain involved into it. It would have the diplomatic domain involved into it. But it would definitely have a element of conventional war also built into that. So gray zone, in my view, is something which is short of that full-fledged.
So it's a
That
war,
is
but
like
not a war, but a war, but not a war, sort of a thing.
you're neither at war, you're neither at peace.
Mm.
It is beyond competition, lower than a full war.
So,
Conflicts would be there. There would be irregular conflicts.
Mm.
There would be legal conflicts. There would be, as you say, China is today the biggest land mafia going around. That is called gray zone. What it is doing in the South China Sea, quietly under the garb of fishing militia, that would be gray zone war.
interesting. So, one thing that one can realize is that actual, war fighting is a very expensive proposition today. It's much too gory for the public to digest as well. The acceptance of body bags that was there earlier is not really, as much today.
You're right.
Leaving the COVID part apart, but people just don't accept body bags coming from the border. So, and this is not just us; it's pretty much I can see the same thing in every country. So, is gray zone something that we're going to see going forward on a larger scale across the world, where with various different differences between a lot of the countries?
Yes, this, in my view, is the future.
Mm.
Gerasimov doctrine is quite famous. He's the Russian chief of general staff
Mm.
who in 2013 uh, put forward a doctrine called the Gerasimov doctrine. Although now there are debates on that it was not actually his doctrine. A military man cannot really be a person who can lay down a doctrine for political purposes. Political doctrines have always to be laid down by the president, or in somebody in the civil hierarchy of leadership who should actually lay down these things. So therefore, people say that it is actually the Primakov's doctrine, which was actually laid out about 10 years back in 2009, 2008, I think. 1998, sorry, 1998, 99. This Russian external affairs minister, who actually laid down the overall doctrine of achieving strategic advantage using all available means. As I said, the political warfare definition which I had given, and it was basically what Gerasimov did was a translation of that into a military or an operational format. As per him, wars are going to be 60% or more than 60% non-contact and 40% only contact. In fact, this number will only increase. Will go to 60, 70, 80. So what I'm trying to say is that non-contact warfare or gray zone will start increasing in. What are the reasons for it? There are five reasons. There is a phenomena of emerging super state actors who are actually waging wars for personal interest as also for interest of their country. I'll give you an example of Bill Gates. He is one person who has influence across the world. One tampering which he does with the software of Microsoft, he can actually change the face of the earth. How many of you know that he earns now $200 billion in vaccine? That was not his core business. And it is across the board. He has direct access and ears to the leaders of the various countries in the world. So, this is a big lever now available to somebody to play around with you. Okay? The super state actors, and there are many such super state actors. Then you have the UN itself. UN is gradually losing its relevance. So people are not having any faith anymore in the UN to resolve their issues. It has become more of a ceremonial platform than a platform to resolve issues, major issues. Yeah. So therefore, people are looking for alternate means to resolve their issues. Yet they don't want to go to war. So what do? They resort to grey zone activities, covert activities, supporting irregulars, proxy warfare. Then the third reason, which has been very important in this, is the rise of the Orientals. Chinese have actually taken the game to a different level now with the South China Sea, land grabbing along our borders, with the BRI initiative, with the access to ports across the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. They have started now playing this game of grey zone in an extremely wonderful manner. But first, they actually went about improving their economy. Their first focus, if you see, for the first 15 years was all out focus on economy. They try to borrow peace, in fact. They resolved the borders with all their neighboring countries except India and Bhutan. Yeah, and Bhutan is actually interlinked with India. So they kept these two disputes as future as a hedging strategy against India. So the rise of the Orientals has been another major factor why I feel that the grey zone activities will now only increase. They're not going to reduce further. The other reason is that terrorism has suddenly become a very attractive tool because of the rise of religious terror and its intensity and its impact on the overall geopolitical scenario of the world. Whether you take it Syria, whether you take it Nigeria, whether you take it the Middle East, North Africa, the Afghan AFPAC region. This is one tool which is actually leading to people very quickly resorting to this kind of a warfare against another country too. Then you have the technological, I call it as a technological tsunami, especially with artificial intelligence and the 5G coming. I am telling you, we are going to see the the entire the global scenario is going to change with the kind of uh, gray zone activities which we will see in the future. Till now, they were being directed only against individuals for frauds and online thefts, etc. You are now going to see countries indulging in this. I hope all of you are aware that I call it as a technology demonstrator because the Chinese actually demonstrated to India that look, if we want, we can stop 12 power stations oblique ports of yours in a blink of a time. If you see that Red Eco Brigade attack, although there are people who are giving a counter theory that no, the Red Eco Brigade attack in Mumbai was more of an internal fault, etc. There were agencies which are telling the other way around, and I tend to believe that the Chinese have demonstrated to you through their hacker groups that they have the capability to get your power infrastructure down in a jiffy. what it entails for India is to strengthen its mechanism to ensure that nobody is able to breach our systems,
systems. Yes.
right? So this is the expandable artificial intelligence, or I call it as the technological tsunami, is something which is going to actually uh, push countries more and more into the gray zone version. And the last reason which I feel is horrifying, and you have referred to it, is the cost of. If you know that 6.4 trillion US dollars have been spent by the US post Cold War in all kinds of war which they have fought, amounting to about 801,000 loss of lives, which also included 335,000 civilians.
Yes.
You take India, for example, from 1994 till date, over 67,000 people have suffered because of this kind of a proxy war and terrorist warfare, whether it is in the northeast, or whether it is in the LWE, or whether it is in JNK, or whether it was the Indian Mujahideens, or it was the attacks which were undertaken by the Paki-based groups across the country. Akshardham, I'm referring to so many of the attacks which have taken place on us, uh, out of which 42,000 are only in the JNK. This is a huge factor which will now make people or make countries adopt the gray zone domain to secure their national interest.
I don't know, so if you would agree, it's also a little bit cheaper to fight this kind of a warfare than people who are looking at cost. For example, Pakistan can keep on creating a nuisance for us,
Yeah.
but it doesn't cost them as much, and it doesn't make them lose their military guys' lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, there are a number of advantages of undertaking gray zone activity. One, there's a huge factor of deniability.
Correct. Sir. Mm.
You are not responsible for it. B, the cost factor, as you said, it's much lesser as compared to fighting a conventional war. They say that if India and Pakistan fight a war for 15 days, we will be ending up spending, I think, 2,50,000 or some, and it would be amounting to a famine after the war. And the after effects of a war are going to be even more dangerous, because then the countries will start again spending money to recoup their losses.
Reham. Mm.
So the effect of the cost is going to only increase in such things. So definitely gray zone is attractive from these major points which I just highlighted.
So we were talking about this the other day as well. This COVID crisis in India has also seen a huge amount of information warfare, if I may use that term, coming into this entire thing. I'd like you to analyze this for us, to just help us understand in the context of China, what do you see happening, and the second would be the context of the West. How do you see this
Okay.
information warfare being played out? Again, I think it would be part of this gray zone to kind of beat us down internally, sort of a thing. So
Yeah, information. Sorry, gray zone warfare has a huge content of information war. And what is information war? Information war is psychological warfare, basically propaganda, social media usage. I'll start quoting from the Chinese perspective what it has done during the COVID.
Hmm.
Okay, moment the COVID started, the first thing which it did as far as information was concerned, it hid the information that it has been affected by COVID. That is first part of information warfare which they did. In order to ensure that anything which would lead to tracing this damn thing to the Chinese are taken care of. Scientists got killed, and there's one scientist who managed to run away also. But the fact of the matter is that that was the first thing. Then, when the world started blaming them, they came up with a counter information. They started blaming the US, and they used two events to do this. There was a US squad or a US contingent which was doing training in China during the same time in the month of October, November. And then there was a video by Robert Redcliffe, who was the chairman of the Center of Disease in Disease Control in US, who said that there is a possibility of the US troops who were suffering from influenza, etc., also possibly may have suffered from. Now they use this video to actually support the cause that look, the contingent came there who were suffering from this kind of a cough and cold which was happening there. So once they came to China, they gave it to the Chinese, and it is the US which is actually responsible for this. And if you see the Chinese media, it splashed this story.
Mm.
It splashed this story all over the Chinese media, as also in the social media, right? That was the second place where they started doing the information war over the rest of the world. Uh, they also have been combining information warfare with uh, real-time events as well.
Mm.
For example, when they claim something in the South China Sea, they show revenue documents, legal documents, old historical documents. What is this? This is all information war. They're trying to buttress their claim even during COVID, to the extent that when India started suffering in the second round,
Mm.
the first thing which they take out is, guess what? A rocket and funeral pyres of India. What is this? This is information war. And this should send a clear message to us that China is no more our friend. It's a different matter that when they came under attack by their own uh, uh, people, that they removed this post from the social media.
Yes.
Otherwise, their intention was very, very clear. Post Galwan, what have they done? They have blanket out their casualties from the environment. So that what is this? This is information war. In order to keep their people under check, and that they should not start questioning the primacy of Xi Jinping or Communist Party of China. They blocked the information from not being exploited by people. So these are some of the examples which I can quote straight away off the cuff of information war which countries are indulging in. There are many examples if one has to go through the entire narrative which the Chinese are playing out. Then you take the West. In my view, the West, as of today, is not using the information war uh, that well as the Chinese are doing it. Right. In my view, the information war which the West is doing will be more restricted to positive activities, which is in terms of humanitarian help. Now, this is also a part of a information war. If you recollect, Biden had stopped our
Vaccine.
flow of raw material vaccine, but then he suddenly realized that this is going to blow back. So he actually personally came back in front of the media and actually clarified that they are going to recommence the flow of vaccine raw material, as also other aid which they would be giving to India. Underhand, the West is doing a lot in terms of covert regime change. This is my reading. Which are the groups which are doing it is something which we have to do our own investigations and find out. For example, there is a concerted effort, in my view, by the Western media through information campaign to undermine the government of India and the current regime. Whether it was the abrogation of Article 370, the host of articles which started emanating from the international media,
Mm.
especially New York Times and Times,
Washington
etc.,
Post. Mm.
Economic Times, uh, were plenty. Then, when they found that that was not buying much eyes, then the and government of India has also been giving one item after the other. The NRC, the CAA riots, and they and all of them are being inflamed by writings from across. And now in the second wave, if you see the kind of articles which are coming out of the West, and most of it is from the foreign media,
Correct, sir.
is to undermine what is that. This is information war by the West. In heart of heart, they would like to have a government which is pliant, which is not focusing on self-reliance, which is not focusing on export of defense equipment, but import, so that India doesn't grow. They would like to have India which is West dependent
Subservient.
for it for two things. One, for critical defense technology, and two, for high tech technology,
Hmm.
whether it is AI, whether it is robotics, whether it is space related technology. They they would not like a self reliant India, because if India becomes self reliant, they would become a significant power in the world. As such, in the vaccine or in the pharmacy sector, India is a force to reckon with. And for all you know, all the efforts which are being, or all these activities which are taking place, maybe just to undermine India, also in the pharmaceutical sector. Later on, possibly a little more analysis of this may reveal that this is the information war being waged by the West against India. For all the support which is being given to you, there is also a simultaneous activity going on to weaken the Indian fabric.
Yes.
And India is one country where you have a Balgadi to a spacecraft,
Hmm.
all coexisting. Nowhere, no other country has this kind of a, from the highest of technology to the lowest of technology is there. From the aborigines of Andamans to the most intelligent and educated guys who are in NASA, etc. There is a fault line galore as far as India is concerned. And we must keep Churchill's statement in mind before we move ahead and secure our frontiers both from information, physical assault, and physical conflict, as also gray zone conflict. Unless we secure ourselves, and that is why the whole of nation approach, multi domain warfare approach, etc., is what people are talking about. We have to secure all our frontiers.
No, I agree with you
Not
in something that you said, sir. And I'd like to just take 30 seconds to mention this. During the second wave in the USA, the highest cases that they touched was 420,000. And they lost about 4,400 people. That was the highest number that they lost in a day. The European Union touched 319,000 cases in one day, and they lost 7,000 people in those days per day. They can keep complaining about India's losses and India's lack of oxygen and stuff like that, but they've forgotten the stories. One, wherein bodies of COVID-19 victims are still lying in oxygen refrigerated trucks in New York. Two, where in Italy, which is supposed to have one of the best health infrastructures in the world, people were actually made to decide who lives and who dies, and this was a job being done by the nurse. So they've forgotten that. And so it's the funeral pyres that are there in India because they create more of an impact. And that is one of the reasons why I asked this question, because it amazes me that even the talk which is there is all about the highest number of cases. Nobody talks about 320 or 350,000 people that are also getting recovered.
you're absolutely right. You also see the deaths per million.
Yes, sir.
You see, at the outset, I would not like to say that any kind of, figure jugglery is a way to get satisfied against this particular pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Losses which we are suffering is phenomenal, and we
Yes.
must get together and try to resolve this problem. I'm sure we will be able to resolve, given our resilience, given our science fraternity, given our doctors who are working day in and day out. We are stretched for infrastructure because of our
Correct.
bulk, population bulge which we have. Some say that we may have actually crossed the Chinese in terms of in terms of population as such, unofficial figures, which I am trying to say. So therefore, our health infrastructure is under stress and strain, which was also for the best a few months back. If you do an objective comparison, like as you had done, deaths per million, people who are recovering, we are 115th in the ranking as far as the deaths per million is concerned. 115th.
mm,
But talk in terms of numbers, yes, we have lost lives, and we must make a point not to lose any further lives. But that should not become a information operation campaign by vested people. This is a time for you to actually bring in positivity into a country and not negativity into a country. You can ask the questions after the famine is over, after the pandemic is over. But during the war, if you start asking questions, that nation is going to lose.
correct.
I just say this so
And
that
leaving Indian politics aside, I mean that is a topic that I don't even want to get into. But one does see a concerted effort from a certain Western sector to just show down India. So on one part they're saying we're giving you aid, and on the second part, hey, you guys don't know what you're doing.
it's a method to undermine you, motivate your science community, especially this doctor community and the research community, which is doing its work as far as the vaccines are concerned,
Yes.
as far as the refinement of the vaccine is concerned, so
Mm.
that you do not come up with a better option in time, and they are able to prevail over you as far as technology is concerned, as far as economic issues are concerned. So I think it is somewhere they are trying to secure their own
Their own
national
interests. So I have a last question for you. Since we are doing a little bit of a myth busting sort of a talk here, at the end of our session, we started with gray zone warfare, and we've come down to information warfare, which is a part of, actually a large part of gray zone warfare.
Yeah, part
Uh,
of Green Zone.
yes, sir. How much truth is there that this whole COVID thing is a bioweapon gone loose in India? What would you analyze in such a statement?
Okay, as far as this question is concerned, uh, my answer is that jury is still out as far as whether it is a
Yes, yes.
biowarfare weapon
Mm.
or not. But there are very strong arguments for both sides.
Yes.
For it being a natural accidental jumping of the coronavirus from seafood market of Wuhan to the humans, and thereafter the zero case, as you say, got infected, and then the world started seeing the menace of or pandemic of corona, which is actually, if you all know, that there are seven types of coronaviruses which are which can infect the human. There are over 40 types of coronaviruses. Mostly they are found in the animals, out of which seven are in the human domain as well.
Mm.
Out of these seven, three are the ones which are life threatening. The other four are normal. They are, I mean, it is said for the other four coronaviruses that every human being on this world would have suffered from it in some time or the other. But the other three, which is the SARS virus, which was found initially in China, and then it went on to the other places, also to South Korea, also, and Japan. Also, some cases are found. That also got contained by isolation, quarantine, and following the methods to deal with such virus uh, infections. Then was the MERS, that is the Middle East coronavirus, which also people were able to control and contain it. Although they are saying that in 2019 there were 200 cases of MERS virus also, which came to light. But they have been able, the scientists and the countries who were involved, who were infected. This was obviously in the Middle East, Saudi
Mm.
Arabia. Although the origin was Jordan, that was another logic which the Chinese scientists gave, that just because the virus started from China doesn't mean the origin is in China. So it is the same thing for the Middle East. Just because the virus started from Saudi Arabia, it doesn't mean that Saudi Arabia was the origin of the virus. Actually, later the virus origin was traced to Jordan.
Mm. Mm.
So this simile was also brought in by the Chinese for the coronavirus too. So this is the natural phenomena which they say that it's not a biowarfare, and there is a scientific evidence to prove this, that this has been the way coronavirus has been spreading in the world. Francis Boyle, who actually drafted the Bioweapon Act, he says that given the fact that there was a research taking place on coronavirus for gain of function, chances of its accidental leak from the Wuhan laboratory is very much possible. So that was the first big person who actually said that, this could be a biowarfare. Then the second thing was, why did they take so much time to announce it? Did they have some
Yes.
ulterior motive? The third was when the investigation team of the WHO went to investigate after a team was formed based on Australia's request that there should be a investigation carried out. They did not allow the team to enter initially. They delayed the team to enter, and after a while, they allowed the team to get inside China. What was the ulterior motive for this? So there are, I would say, circumstantial evidences to say that there would have been possibility of this being a biowarfare. The other disadvantage of a biowarfare is that once the genie is out of the bottle, then a biowarfare doesn't distinguish between friend or foe, unless the guy who has produced it has a foolproof method to deal with it. Now, it is this factor which is now coming in the way of which is suggesting that it could be a biowarfare, because the Chinese have stopped suffering from it. What is that thing which they knew more than the others? Because they were doing the research, possibly, so they have a much more ground knowledge of this virus, which they are not sharing with the rest of the world. I read an article yesterday. It was published on Game India uh, magazine forum, which said that the Chinese have developed a method to treat corona through vaccine and the traditional Chinese method of medicine. By adopting this procedure, they have not allowed coronavirus to spread like wildfire in China. So if you look at the circumstantial evidences, you tend to start believing that it could be a bioweapon. I would leave it at that. That the jury is still out. There are arguments both in favor and against it. I tend to agree to the second thing, that it could be a biowarfare, because the Chinese do have a method of treating it. The way things are panning out, I'm saying based on that, the way the Chinese have managed the uh, Wuhan virus, possibly leads one to believe that this could be a biowarfare. And who's gaining in this maximum? Chinese. Theirs was the only economy which grew. Maybe it was just by 1%.
Yes, sir.
And this year, it was projected that India will grow by 11. Now you see what has happened. Moment all these projections came, India suffered the second wave. How it suffered? I mean, we can keep blaming the Kumbh and elections, but the thing that it would be of such a magnitude, or the Indian strain would be so deadly,
No one knows.
cannot come from Kumbh. The deadliness of the strain, the scientists have to explain as to why the Indian strain, as we are calling it, is very deadly and dangerous second time round. So there are circumstantial evidences to say that. I tend to believe that it could be a biowarfare, but the jury is still out.
Interesting. So I think this has been a very interesting conversation, especially about the gray zone, because it is a situation that we find ourselves in today. So I'd like to thank you, sir, for doing the research on this. And I'm also you were saying that you're doing a bit of work on this, sir.
Yeah, actually, I am writing a book on gray zone. So I am currently writing the chapter on regime changes, which has been a very common technique to do gray zone warfare. Or in those times, they used to call it as political war.
Yes, sir. I think
Prediction.
this whole gray zone warfare has a lot for us to think about. It's military. The line between the military and civil is kind of blurring out with this particular thing. Because there
Very
They're not
right.
attacking the
Very
guys
right.
with the they're not attacking the guys with the guns. They're attacking the mothers, the fathers, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, and everyone. So,
Probably you and me are doing a gray zone warfare incidentally as of now.
mm,
Just think over it. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Thank you, Jai Hind.